what's the point? Like why? Like because that's when I would try to explain some of these experiences to other people. I could see their eyes would kind of glaze over, like they didn't get it. It's just like what? Like huh? Like it all sounds great, like with the nice words, universal consciousness and awareness and authenticity, and it sounds great. It's nice words, but I imagine there's someone out there that's like, yeah, but so what? Like so like I know there's something there, but how would you describe like if someone's saying that? Like what's the point of this? Like why bother? Why not just live your life?
Yeah. Well, that's honestly, it's a very good question. And so I always think that it's best to kind of work through specific examples rather than speaking in generalities when addressing a question like this. So here's where I use myself as an example because I have two very distinct parts of my life that I can identify. One, where I was not being authentically myself, and then when I learned how to authentically be myself, and then what changed for me through that. So, so the ego of Martin Ball, the identity of this person. I grew up in a secular, non-religious, non-spiritual household, but even as a young child, was very interested in the question of, well, what is the true nature of reality? And there was even at one point when I was a small child, and I got down and just following the prompts that I saw on TV, when kids pray, they kneel down on their bed and they put their hands in front of them and they're like, please God, blah, 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 or whatever. So anyway, I tried doing that once and I got down on my bed and I put my hands in front of myself and I said, God, if you exist, I really want to know, but I just want you to know that I'm not just going to believe in you because I don't buy it. And so I'm going to need some proof. So that was one of my defining characteristics as a person is that I was very interested in this question of what is real? What is the nature of reality? And that's kind of what spurred me on to study philosophy and then go into religious studies and investigating altered states of consciousness and questions of the nature of reality. But anyway, like everybody else, as growing up, small children start to develop their sense of self and they start to distinguish between what they think is themselves and what is not themselves. This is a primary function of the ego, that it makes a distinction between me and not me, self and not self, subject and object. So that's what we call duality, right? Existing in a realm of duality where there's me and then there's everything that is not me. And like everybody else, you take on certain patterns and certain modes of expression that may or may not really be authentic for you. So one of the patterns that I took on and one of the identities that I formed for myself is that coming from a secular household, when I first learned about Buddhism, I was very astounded because this was not talking about believing in Jesus or reading the Bible or heaven or hell, but it was like, sit down, shut up, and pay attention. I liked that. I said, oh, okay, well, maybe I could be a Buddhist. So I was practicing as a Buddhist for a number of years and following meditation and also following compassion and, all of those good things that Buddhism does. And I used Buddhism to kind of create the notion that, oh, I'm a nice guy, I'm a compassionate guy, and I'm not going to make waves, I'm not going to make disturbances. And also, my own parents had gone through a very ugly divorce when I was 9 years old, and they were screaming and yelling and fighting with each other. And so I had kind of developed this idea like, okay, well, I'm going to be a spiritual person, and I'm not going to get into arguments. I'm not going to make waves. I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm not going to do anything to make other people upset. Now, through those energetic patterns that I was developing within myself, what that meant was that I needed to actually shut myself down on various levels. Because then later in life, I ended up getting married and actually was very unhappy within that relationship. And whenever I would try and discuss my unhappiness with my wife at that time, she would have a big emotional reaction and really shut down. And so what I learned was suck it up, be nice, and use your Buddhism to overcome your attachment to wanting to have a fulfilling sexual and romantic relationship, that I'm just attached to those desires. And so I've got to shut those down, and I've just got to be a nice Buddhist and be a nice guy. And the result is I was fucking miserable. I was totally fucking miserable, and I was not authentically expressing myself, that I was holding all of it inside. And it was all done through this idea of I'm being a good Buddhist, I'm being compassionate by not expressing or embodying any of these energies that I'm actually feeling. And then for me, the biggest change that came about was when, prompted by events, which I won't get into it because there's just way too many details of the story, but it was at Burning Man in 2007, and I'm tripping on mushrooms out in the middle of the playa all by myself, just sitting there contemplating what I'm supposed to do. And this woman comes up, and we have a brief conversation, and she tells me, look, listen to your heart and follow your heart. And even though it may be hard, 10 years from now, you'll know that you made the right choice. So at that point, after I went home from Burning Man, I told my wife I was leaving, and that was just transformative for me, because at that point I stopped holding it in, and I started allowing myself to really experience what is really in my heart. What do I really feel? And even though, yes, I am concerned about being compassionate and respectful and sensitive to other people's needs, wants, and desires, but I was using all of that as an excuse just to hold myself back and to not really authentically be myself. And it was shortly after that that I ended up moving up here to Ashland, Oregon, moving out of Santa Barbara area in Southern California. And within a month, I was invited to experience 5-MeO DMT. And at that event, I was introduced to this molecule, which within seconds, I experienced myself as dying. So I inhale this molecule, and within seconds, it's like, oh shit, I've really done it now. Like, this is it. I'm dying. And not only am I dying, but I'm merging with this infinite consciousness. And not only that, I'm totally cool with it. Like, this is the best thing ever. And my ego, the persona of Martin, thought he was probably never going to come back from that. But I allowed it to take place, and it was the most beautiful experience of my life. And so I had studied non-duality intellectually. I had studied it, as a meditator. I had studied it as a person with a PhD in religious studies and comparative mysticism. But this, I would say, was my first actual experience of it. And at that point, I realized everything that I'd ever thought about this experience was merely that, a thought that my ego had that was boxed into various concepts and words and related to my own sense of identity, my own sense of subject-object separation. And this event completely transcended all thought, transcended all language, transcended all subject-object duality, and went into a place of non-duality. And from that point, then I started undergoing this radical process of energetic reformatting. And through that, again, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of points to it. For anybody who's listening or watching, that's this book, Being Infinite, an entheogenic odyssey into the limitless eternal, a memoir from ayahuasca to Zen. This is the book that I wrote about my journey and my process, because so many people asked me about it. It's like, shit, I should just write a book so I can just give them the book and don't have to tell all the details. So that's this one here. What year did I publish that one? 2014. So I learned how to be myself, and it wasn't what I had thought. And really gave myself permission to, okay, this universal consciousness and being, it is a being of energy. The energy itself is pure unconditional love. Pure unconditional love means, guess what? Anything goes, because there are no conditions. Meaning that it's up to you to be yourself and also take responsibility for yourself. You can be an asshole if you want, but then you have to take responsibility for that. You have to come with the consequences of being an asshole. You can be an overly compassionate, self-negating person if you want, but then you have to take responsibility for that, and you get the consequences of that you are shut down. So finding that balance of how do I just be myself, be authentically myself, and also invite that from others, so that I've found this freedom within myself and want to encourage and invite that freedom within others. We're kind of giving up any sense of control, either of myself or of others or of outcomes, and being present with reality as it is, without projections, without attachments, and just coming from a place of embodied centeredness and clarity. And it's fucking liberating. It does not solve all of your problems. It does not fix anything for you other than give you that sense of, I am truly being myself, and I have full permission to embody myself in any given moment. So I'm not holding back anymore. I'm not trying to be anything for anyone according to anyone's standards other than that own resonance that I have within my heart of, am I being true to myself? And that is the highest value that I think anybody could live for. So that's the point. And it also removes the bullshit. It removes the delusions. It removes the projections and attachments. So you just live from a place of clarity, which is the greatest gift you could ever possibly give yourself. So that's why I say that, look, if you really want to do yourself a favor, learn who you are and then learn how to be yourself. That's really all you need to do. You don't need to be a master of ethics. You don't need to be a master of meditation. You can be if you want. But the job of being yourself is your job and your responsibility. And you have the power to do it. Or you can live in the illusions. You can live in the lies. You can live in the games of the ego and all the value and meaning that the egos invest in all of that. And, you know, I'd rather live an authentic life than a life invested into the games of the ego and the illusions that it projects onto reality, because it's just not all that fun. So that's the point.
I fucking love it, man. Like, I mean, this is what Rage Art, this is, Rage Art Unleash the Beast. Like, part of what I say when I'm starting a rage, and I call them rages, not meditations and not exercises, rages. Part of it's remember who you are. Because I've had a bunch of things happen during, it's always been ceremonies for me. It's, I've meditated a lot, but it's usually when these things happen for me, it's during, say, ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD. I was in Thailand at the time, and I went to see The Lion King with my girlfriend at the time. And you've seen The Lion King, right?
Oh, yeah. Both versions, cartoon
so Simba
and
goes,
the live action.
Yeah. The new one. Yeah, so this was the new one, the live action, I think. And it gets to that part where Simba runs away from his family, and then he's in the jungle with Timon and Pumbaa, and he's forgotten who he is. He thinks he's basically like Timon and Pumbaa, like a herbivore, eating bugs all the time. And the Nala comes along, the girl lion that he ends up falling in love with later, but she comes along to try and take him back. He doesn't want to go. Eventually, the monkey comes and sort of gets Simba to chase the monkey all the way down to some water. And Simba looks in the water and sees his dad, and he looks up. His dad's in the clouds. And his dad says, remember who you are. And as soon as that happened, this is in the cinema, I burst into tears and I was sobbing for the rest of the movie until the end of the credits. I'd never, just at that phrase, remember who you are. And then I took that in with me 2 or 3 weeks later into an ayahuasca ceremony. Just I can't even put it into words. As you know, the craziest shit happened. And all related to this, remembering, tapping into that sense of being, connecting with the sense of we're all one. It sounds so cheesy, but it's a very real thing that we can tap into. And so, I mean, from I'm just really just trying to, I guess, reinforce or echo back what you're saying. Is it's incredible. Every time I'm not in that all the time, but when it comes through, it's the most amazing thing, the most amazing feeling, the most amazing whatever it is. But it's very difficult to actually explain to someone what you can talk about it conceptually, but then we're back at the level of ideas again. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's this or that. Yeah. But so much of it, or all of it, is when all of that falls away. It's you can't put a non-verbal experience into a word because it's no longer a non-verbal experience. Anyway. I just love it. I'm all about this stuff. And that's what Rage Art is all about, is giving people tools, not spiritual tools. They don't have to meditate, but ways to actually figure this stuff out that's more connected with the nervous system and learning how to feel what is that authentic self. Because I tell people, it's not something, you can't think about it. It's not something you decide for yourself. You are just who you are. And it's just learning how to feel for that, getting to know it, and then giving it space and room to just do what it wants to